Ladies and gentlemen, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Recently, Raven has really stepped it up in terms of general communication with the community, and this is primarily in the form of various devs actually going on different streams and having live interviews, which I think is super cool. And just a couple of days ago, we had a brand new interview with Ted Timmons, who is the creative director at Raven, and also the Baka Bros. And this interview actually gave us a lot of new information on the future of Warzone, some of what to expect in Season 3, and some of what to expect in the long term. As we break it all down today, if you enjoy the video at any point, let me know by dropping a like on it. And of course, if you're new here or if you have not already subscribed, this is the place to be for all things going on in COD. So feel free to hit that sub button and turn on those post notifications. That way you can always guarantee you are up to date. Also, just a heads up, right now my G Fuel discount code WhosImmortal is boosted to get you 30% off your entire order as opposed to the normal 10%. So if you want to grab anything at all from the G Fuel site, now is literally the best time to do so thanks to that increased discount. So like I said, when it comes to this interview, we actually gained a lot of new information on what changes we can expect with Season 3 and sort of how Raven is approaching the future of Warzone as well. For the most part, this interview consisted of a lot of new questions and new answers. There were a few ones that were sort of reiterated between this interview and the previous ones that we've covered with Swag and then also with Teep. Like for instance, the first part of this interview actually started off with a conversation about Verdansk. Obviously, this has been a very, very hot topic in the past couple of weeks, ever since really the devs did that interview with Teep, where they said they'd love to have a map rotation with Caldera and with Verdansk going back and forth, but it's just not technologically possible. There are too many hurdles they'd have to jump to get there. And they sort of reiterated that this Verdansk rotation does have too many technical hurdles. It's got space issues. You'd have to re-download the game every single time they went to go and flip the map. Or if you wanted to have both maps on the game at the same time, the game literally would not fit on some of the base like PlayStation 4 models, which they just don't want to do. They don't want to have a game that has that massive of a footprint on any given platform. They would rather just focus on the stability of the game right now. And that is a big point that we really haven't heard before. In these previous interviews, it was more so, yeah, we'd love to have Verdansk back. We just can't do it because of technical issues and technical problems. They also really talked about how they are focusing on the game for what it is now and what it's going to be in the future, and how they want the game to be stable and consistent and perform well for the coming seasons, rather than just doubling back to where they were before with Verdansk and saying, hey, here's this. Also, this introduction is probably going to cause a lot of issues. So we did get another official Verdansk response. This one, though, again, sort of repeating what we talked about before with the technical issues, but also adding on, they are committed to Caldera and the stability of Warzone Pacific as we know it. Now, speaking of Caldera, they sort of doubled down, or Ted doubled down, I should say, that Caldera is the main focus and they are prioritizing improving it and improving the general gameplay. He went on to say that Season 3 has some very, very big changes in store for Caldera, ones that are especially based on player feedback, ideally to increase the general flow. We've talked about it before, other creators have talked about it as well. Caldera's a pretty cool map for what it is. However, it has this design flaw where the vast majority of the points of interest are all on the edge of the map, on low ground on the map, which hurts the flow of the game. You're either constantly running uphill or there's nobody in any of those POIs. It also sounded like in the sort of description of some of these Season 3 changes, Ted didn't go super into detail, but what he did sort of insinuate, you could say, is that it seems like Peak is going to be changing in different ways. He really sort of was vocalizing, hey, you know, we get that Peak is this primary area. However, it is affecting the flow of the game. He didn't get super in depth, like I said, but it did sort of seem like we are going to see some big changes to Peak with the Season 3 update. Something the Baka Bros actually brought up that Ted liked a lot was the idea of portable redeploy balloons. Obviously, we now have portable buy stations in the game. The redeploy balloons, which have been a massively successful addition to the map. Everyone seems to love them. They're only planted in certain stationary areas, obviously, right? But if you could carry one of those, like you could carry a deployable buy station or a different field upgrade, and you could drop this anywhere on the map. Say you're trying to get up to the top of Peak late end zone, but you're in the middle of those wide open rock fields. Drop one of those down. You could rotate out. That'd be a huge play. Ted really, really liked this idea, but then he said, oh, you know, I can't really say too much about that right now, which is pretty much code for, yeah, it's something that we're probably talking about and working on internally. Anytime they have sort of those non-answers where it's like, oh, that's cool, I can't say anything about that, that's probably because it's being worked on. So if I had to guess based off of my years and years covering this stuff, all the news and whatnot, I would be very surprised if we didn't see portable redeploy balloons at some point, maybe in Season 3, maybe in Season 3 Reloaded, or maybe even in Season 4. Now, we also got to talk about the meta, because there were quite a few conversations about the meta in this interview. First up, Ted actually specifically said that every season in Warzone, they aim to have a clear meta, not necessarily meaning this gun has to be good, but they don't want it to be changing constantly. That's sort of their approach to that. Whether you disagree with that or agree with that, that's up to you. Obviously, things like the Bren have been around for too long, but he said that changing the meta around constantly, you know, having the Bren good for 2 weeks, then having the Automaton good for 2 weeks, and then having the Cooper good for 2 weeks, that's not good for the general player base, because that's going to require them to go in and rank up a new meta weapon every this many days, you know, which a lot of players just don't have time for, especially Vanguard guns, which take a century to max out. So they don't want to change the meta too much. They just want to have one that's very clear and diverse for every single season. They also talked a bit about blueprints, because obviously a lot of the blueprints in the game are very cool. They look awesome, but then you go and throw on the meta attachments and it doesn't look very cool anymore, because all the meta attachments change the look of the gun because it doesn't come with those. Ted sort of said that the way that they want to design blueprints, and especially things like mastercrafts moving forward, is in a way where regardless of the attachments they have on them, you can jump in and they'll be semi-competitive. So really the way I interpreted this is that in the future, as we see new bundles drop and new blueprints and new mastercrafts, they're probably going to have more meta-esque builds rather than having random things like flashlights and weird muzzles and weird magazines. They're probably going to be more competitive in the general meta. Maybe not the best build, but something close to it. Now, Ted was also asked about the sniping meta, and he had a very interesting response here. He specifically said there is a major meta shift coming for snipers in Season 3. I don't think he specified if it'd be right at the launch of Season 3 or maybe with Season 3 Reloaded, but he basically went on to say that the sniping meta hasn't changed in way too long. The Swiss and the CAR are the best options, and nothing's really come close to competing with those in forever. So the likely outcomes here are one of two things, maybe both things. We're probably going to see some significant nerfs to the Swiss and to the CAR, and or some big buffs to some of the other Cold War and Modern Warfare sniping options, and likely some very big buffs to some of the Vanguard snipers to make those worthwhile and actually usable. So it looks like we are finally going to see a drastic change in the sniping meta come Season 3. Personally, I am very interested in that. Of course, the Season 3 patch notes will inform us as to what's going on there. They also talked a little bit about modes, and they asked like specifically around BR200 if that was something that could ever come back, because we had it before. We talked about this a bit last time with Swag's interview. This time they did have a slightly different answer. Ted basically explained it's awesome, but at this point in the game, with so much in the game with all the Vanguard guns, Cold War guns, Modern Warfare guns, vehicles, blueprints, everything that they have to pack into this game, adding in another 50 players is something that ends up doing more harm than good to the general stability. So it's something that they would love to do, but as of right now, it's not really in the pipeline. You could say it's not really on the horizon. What they did say though, or what Ted did say, is that he is very interested in modes like the April Fool's mode, totally normal battle royale, where they can do these fun things that sort of surprise the community. And because it was so well received back on April 1st, they are looking into doing more things like that. So hopefully we see some cool LTMs stem from that at some point in the future. There was also some talk of the anti-cheat, and I see this comment all the time in my comments. Hey, why doesn't the anti-cheat work? I'm still constantly running into cheaters. For what it's worth, the anti-cheat is always being updated. Ted explained this in this interview. So are the cheats though. Every time the anti-cheat gets updated and it blocks some cheats, those cheat devs are going to go out and update their cheats so it gets past the anti-cheat. It's an infinite back and forth and will never fully be solved. However, just because there are cheaters that you run into here and there does not mean the anti-cheat is not working. It's always being updated, but they don't want to talk about that, because when they do talk about that, then that's a direct message to all the cheat devs saying, hey, we should go update our stuff now so we can bypass the anti-cheat yet again. If they work in silence, then they end up being a little bit more secretive with it, and all the cheat devs don't know when things are getting fixed, when cheats are being, combated. So it's probably for the better that they don't talk about that, but for what it's worth, it is always being updated. Moving on, Ted talked a little bit about some of the other features that we are going to see here in Season 3. This one was very ambiguous. He said something along the lines of they're looking for more second chance opportunities in game, and Season 3 will include something along those lines. He didn't go into any other detail though, so this could be an alternative change to the gulag, where maybe if you keep winning your gulag, you can keep going back and sort of adding in that Mo gulag thing, or that infinite gulag aspect into more games. It could be something else, but they are interested in looking at more second chance opportunities outside of the gulag for future updates. They asked about ranked play. They sort of reiterated here that ranked play is not in the pipeline for any future seasons. And in my personal opinion, it's very likely going to happen with Warzone 2. As much as we all want ranked play, I cannot wait for it. It's very unlikely that it happens in season 3, 4, or 5 of Vanguard / Warzone, and very likely it happens with Warzone 2. Ted sort of slipped up at one point in this interview and almost teased a new item of some sort coming to the game. He was talking about how important it is when teammates are able to ping certain things in game, like an armor box, like a trophy system. And then he started to say like something else, and he caught himself. So this would insinuate that some kind of new loot item is going to be coming in season 3. Again, not really in depth there, but something to keep an eye out for those patch notes and for the season 3 reveals coming up here in the next few weeks. Then to wrap things up with this interview, the Baka Bros asked about, the possibility of seeing something like final kill cams in Warzone at the end of the game to show how the game was won. And to this, basically, Ted just said, hey, that's an awesome idea. This is something we're going to bring up to the team. And, if it makes its way into the pipeline, it does. If it doesn't, oh well. But it is something they are curious about and something they would be interested in. So perhaps we see that in one of the future seasonal updates. All that being said, though, that is effectively everything we learned in this interview, and that's going to wrap things up for today. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know by dropping a like on it. And of course, if you're new here or if you have not already subscribed, every day I got you covered with all things going on in COD, so feel free to hit that sub button and turn on those post notifications. And as always, if you want to check out any of my partners, be sure to use code WhosImmortal for a discount on all Scuff, G Fuel, Gamer Advantage, and Control Freak products. And the links for all those can be found down in the description below. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.